So good afternoon. I think it's just 12:01, so I can officially say that. Welcome to the last day of the Build Conference. I'm very excited to be here today with four kind of more longtime friends and some newer friends to talk to you about women in technology. My name is Erin Chappell. I am currently the general manager in the Windows and Devices group at Microsoft. My team is responsible for delivering the base technologies in Windows, such as the kernel and the hypervisor and core storage, across all of the devices that range from phone to Xbox to HoloLens, up to our server and our server line of products. And it's my pleasure to be here with four phenomenal women to talk to you a little bit about what it means to stand out in both technology as well as business. So we're going to do introductions a little bit differently this time around, kind of spice it up a little bit. You know, one of the things that I love about being part of an event like today is that in addition to both being able to reconnect with friends, old friends, and spend some time with them, but also meet new friends, I get to pause for a moment in my busy life. You know, it's really the pace that we operate in is somewhat amazing at times to think about just how many things you have going on. And it's really hard to stop and reflect and really think about, you know, what is it that I should be doing and how should I be thinking about navigating my own professional career and my own path. And so I have a very personal bias, and that bias is that we learn best through conversation. We learn best through stories. We learn best by understanding what other people have done, whether it be a great aha or a breakthrough innovation, or whether it be a failure that they had that they really navigated through and learned from. And, you know, with a young child at home, I have a 2.5-year-old at home, I've learned that, you know, every good story has a hero, and in fact, more specifically, a superhero. And those superheroes usually have superpowers. And so I thought it would be interesting today to start out the conversation by looking at these women and really understanding what is their origin story, right? How did they develop? How did they learn about what their superpower is, the thing that's really helped them be the hero of their own story and bring them to this point where we are. And so, you know, I thought I'd start off with Jackie. And Jackie has a career that's taken her around the globe across many different organizations that has landed you at Microsoft more recently. And so, Jackie, if you could start off by telling us a little bit about what is your current role, and then, you know, how did you discover your superpower, right? And how did you leverage that to take you on the path that brought you here to Microsoft today?
All right, thanks, Erin. It's really great to see all the women in the audience. Welcome to Build. When I think about my story, my original, right now I'm the interim CIO for Microsoft, which is I run all of the technology services within the company. My original superpower, when I think about it, was I was a problem solver. Oh. So I was the type of person who, you had a problem, Jackie was the person who solved the problem. And then as I morphed in my career, I realized that my superpower became multitasking. Ah. So I was a woman, I had children, I had to manage the children, I had to manage a job, had to go home and cook the food, I had to do all these things, and multitasking and planning my life became my superpower. Now my superpower, I think, is more about inspiring. And so my superpower today as a leader is about how I encourage and inspire people. How I think about that is when you walk away from me, you feel like, wow, Jackie has really encouraged me to do and be anything that I can be.
Wonderful. And just before I move on, can you think about, did you know your superpower before it happened, or was it something you kind of discovered along the way?
The inspiring piece, I realized because people told me. Yeah. I didn't realize. You know, I'd say, oh, I'm going to sit on stage and I'm just going to have a conversation, or I'm going to go speak to an individual. And it wasn't until after one of the conferences, the young ladies came up to me and said, wow, you're really inspiring. And then it became a theme. Yeah. And then I thought to myself, wait a second, there's something in that that I need to harness, and I need to figure out how to use that.
So it was really, in some sense, about just being yourself.
That's right.
And
Just be
leveraging the core, values and strength that you bring to the table. Wonderful. So Holly, you came into technology from a very different path than most people who go through and have a, undergrad degree in computer science or coding or whatnot. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey and, your superpower? And did it help you as you navigated that? Or was it something that complemented, or was it just, something entirely different?
Absolutely, thank you, Erin. So my name is Holly, and it's really glad to see all the women in the audience today and to be at Build. So my superpower would be I am first and foremost a disruptor and a instigator. As a child, my first word was not just one word but three: I'll do it. So I really knew from a young age that I, love to disrupt the status quo. I do not have a traditional CS background. In fact, I went to Princeton and I majored in anthropology. So I'm a proud anthropologist turned data scientist. And I love combining social science and data science to really understand human behavior. And as you know, if anyone is familiar in this audience with data science, data is the ultimate artifact of human behavior. So that really drives me to ask the kind of questions and investigate the kind of answers that I like to think about. I came into computer science because I was working at a financial company. And as you may or may not know, financial technology processes are very obsolete and kind of slow. So I took a coding boot camp, at night, and I eventually ended up building a CMS and then presented it to the head of my department, and he was kind of floored and said, wow, you are in research and distribution. You built an entire CMS for a client. That's kind of unbelievable. And at that point, I knew, I was first and foremost a builder, and I had to, study computer science full time. And since working as a software engineer in Vancouver, I launched Women Who Code, and to date we've grown to be over 900 women, frankly, because I was sick of going to meetups and not being around other women builders. So that drive to disrupt, that drive to instigate has really carried through, everything I do, whether it is in the community or in my current role. So.
Very cool. So two kind of very different paths, but some common themes that are emerging, right? About this sense of who you are and what your identity is and how you can really tap into that in order to have, the impact that you want in the business and technology world. So Joy, you have yet a different path, right? If I think about, Joy and I actually have the distinction of starting on the same exact day at Microsoft, and so every year we get to kind of celebrate our anniversaries together. But your career has been in Microsoft in the software engineering discipline, and you've really seen that discipline evolve and your ability to kind of flourish in that and make it into your role today, leading the identity division within Microsoft. And so what's your superpower in that context, and how did it help you, right, as you kind of plotted this course?
Thanks, Erin. I think we started at 5, right, at Microsoft.
Yeah.
So for me, I think, mainly I studied computer science, and I always pride myself to be super technical, and I think I built my brand around being a very technical woman. That has helped me to succeed when I started as an engineer and grown from the ranks. Being very small, like even physically, makes me have to be louder, not literally, but be able to make an impact. I think it's about to be able to make decisions, even though, bold decisions that drive results. I think that would be how helped me to be successful at Microsoft. And as my career grows, now becomes also more just about collaboration, running identity for both commercial as well as consumer identities across Microsoft services really requires me to collaborate across the company. And that's actually going to be how it's going to help my team as well as myself to be successful.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks, Joy. And Daniela, one of the things that really stood out to me when I was kind of learning more about you and your background is this deep passion you have for like one technology area, right, around speech, and all the things that you've been able to do with that, right, from within Microsoft to the role that you're playing right now. And so, is that something that you kind of knew early on? And can you share a little bit about how that influenced your superpower and has brought you to where you are today?
Well, Daniela Braga, founder and CEO of Define Crowd. Thank you, Erin. I think I would probably back up this way. My superpowers at this point, when you're a leader, at this point, you have to have a couple of skills. It's not just one. You gotta have a few. But I think what has been driving me through my career, number one is this thirst of knowledge all the time. That's kind of, and restless. I'm always, the moment I achieve a goal and achieve and surpass a challenge that I keep putting to myself, I'm bored. And I have to move to the next one. Now, the fact that, and this has been through my career, this kind of probably made me be at my age and always at my age ahead in terms of the number of things I could accomplish, and the challenges I could accomplish, the positions I would accomplish. But I think most of it was this restlessness that I have. Now, of course, about the speech part, my background is in linguistics. Then I discovered speech technology, and I'm in the field for 17 years. I'm probably one of the very few that has stayed and remained in the field for so long. Now it's hotter than ever. The area of human-computer interaction and human-computer communication. I started studying communication between humans. Then, very early in my career, started to help visually impaired use computers through text-to-speech technology and speech recognition. And since then, it's been Microsoft 7 years with the Microsoft Cortana Group, speech science in local companies. I've been all over the world, in Europe, in China, in the US. And that's basically, the whole thing has been, the speech thing is basically, this is an amazing area. I think, and now when we are finally, machines are in our world, they were always, but before we were studying in research. It was research. Then Microsoft started to put the first systems in voice interaction out in the world, and we were pioneers at that time. And now it's all over the place. It's smart homes, it's connected cars, and it's starting to be multimodal. Machines are understanding not only voice, they're understanding our gestures, our paralinguistic information. So this is the fast. If you understand humans, you do it, and you emulate the behavior with machines. I think this is going to keep going for a couple of more years.
It's very inspirational. I think all of your stories, the thing that stands out for me is, how well you know yourselves, right? And really what it is that drives you, that you're passionate about, that you're good at, or that is your superpower, but also the passion you have then for the world around you, whether or not that be the people, the technology, or the business, right? And how you really have married those two, right? To have the impact that you've had in your careers thus far. And so, these stories are really inspirational, and I think what stands out in them is the hero, is the superpower. But we all know that a good story isn't a great story unless there are other people involved. There are other, there's always the protagonist and the villain and the whatnot. But I think in people's careers, it's oftentimes the people around who advocate for and support, right, you in that journey, and what that teaches you about yourself and about how you want to contribute back. And so, if you think about, right, your path and how you've got to the place that you are today, are there people that particularly stand out to you that have shaped that? And what did you really do in that to facilitate that support or that advocacy in your careers? So, maybe Joy, if you'd like to kind of start us out on that question.
Sure. So, at Tuesday when I kicked off the Women Business Technology Reception, I talked about the the fact I got my current role is because Scott Guthrie asked me to take on identity, even though I was not in the team at the time. So I talk about how to have a mentor or sponsor be able to take a bet in terms of giving that sort of career opportunity. But for today, I actually want to talk about another person that Aaron and I know both dearly, is Bill Lane, who was the corporate vice president running Windows Server until a year ago that he retired. Bill has always, Bill's brand is he's just so grounded. He's a sound of reasoning,
Yeah.
And somebody has such a high integrity that can always, you feel he has your back. And that is really important to both of us. He helped to shape both, Aaron's career and my career in different capacity. And Bill has been a champion for diversity for many, many years. That's before diversity becomes very sort of
in vogue
or trendy now. And to me, is having somebody in the leadership position be able to vouch for more women in technology, as well as both you and I feel anytime if we have. I mean, we didn't come to where we are without being through challenges, and be able to know somebody at leadership position that we can go to. I can feel comfortable to talk about what are my challenges, and be able to feel afterwards feel like somebody like Bill really understand it, not just listen, but also understand it, and then over time be able to help to shape the situation or the events. That really helped.
It sounds like, Bill didn't just magically appear in some sense, that there was really a relationship that you two, right, formed over time. Is there one thing maybe that you think that was really helpful in you establishing that relationship to gain that support from him?
I think to me, it's also a lot of that is the personal side. For Bill, for example, I think it's not just about talking about work, but also understand what Bill likes personally, as well as having that personal connection. So it's not like I don't find the work is just work relationship. I think having an understanding of we each as a person is really important, and if having that kind of, so he sees career throughout the decades. I think that helped to know who I am. I know who he is.
Yeah.
So I think that's the relationship part really helped.
Very cool. Daniela, has your experience been similar, different than Joy's?
I had many people that influenced me through my life, frankly. And it starts always with family, with parents. Then goes to some very important professors. All of us probably have that. My PhD professor, one of them specifically, very, very influential in my career, even today. Then I had amazing mentors at Microsoft in different locations of the world where I worked. And now my investors. I think that I can say that I have amazing investors. We're invested by Sony, Amazon, and Portugal Ventures, and they're amazing. So I think mostly, it comes down to understanding yourself, knowing yourself very well, which is a work in progress until we die, of course. But understanding that as we grow, we are going to have needs that evolve. We can never stay, each person will impact our lives in a time and space that are specific for the moment of growth that we are. And I think that awareness and the luck of finding both circumstances is what I've been very lucky.
So you've essentially been able to kind of weave together this tapestry in some sense of all of these different opinions and perspectives as you come in. And that very resonates with me. I think that we're oftentimes shaped very much and very fundamentally by the experiences we've had in our lives. I know my father was an elementary school teacher and a basketball coach, and so in our house, it was really about, the value of helping and the value of helping to educate others, and that's really core to my kind of leadership style and leadership principles that I have today. I'm wondering, Jackie, you talked about kind of being inspiring others was really kind of a core superpower that you've discovered. Can you talk a little bit maybe about what your sponsors and advocates have taught you about that along the way, and how it shaped your view on how you give back into the company and the world?
Yeah, I'll use one specific example. Early in my career, I was a developer, and many meetings occurred as part of that. And I went into a meeting, and my manager was in the meeting, and lots of people were in the meeting. I was the only woman in the meeting, and throughout the meeting, I said nothing because I was busy trying to calculate in my head, should I say something? What if I sound silly? Maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't. And so I didn't say anything.
I'm sure that's not familiar to any of us.
And so as I left the meeting, my manager came over to me and said, Jackie, you never said a word in that meeting. And I said, you know why? Number one, I couldn't get a word in edgewise if I tried, and I tried. And, frankly, I'm an introvert, and I'm a little bit scared of speaking up. And so he said, how can I help you? And so I said, well, why don't we come up with a plan? When we're in the meeting, if I want to say something, I'll give you a nod. Oh. And then you can help me. And so every time I was in a meeting, if I wanted to say something, I nodded, and he said, so Jackie, what do you think about this? What are your views?
That's awesome.
And so from here on in, I had this dialogue where I started to feel comfortable,
yeah.
And he made sure he engaged me. And so to your point about moving forward now, as a leader going forward now, I make it my point of if there is a quiet voice in the room, what are your thoughts? Yeah. And that taught me a lot, just that one experience.
Wonderful, wonderful. And a great strategy. I'm sure there are others in the audience who have wrestled with that, and maybe it's a good tip that you can use with somebody that you feel comfortable or supported with in your environment. How your whole basis in some sense is about inspiring others, right? The story of being the disruptor, but bringing together women and kind of building this community and whatnot. How has your own advocacy that others have had for you and that support really shaped or influenced your position and your passion around this?
That's a great question. And, I love, Jackie, your comment about just elevating other voices, elevating your own voice to be heard in these spaces, especially technical spaces. And, the reason I do what I do is really to give other women the mic, to tell their stories, tell their projects, what they're working on, their research, the ideas that they're pushing forward. And, I'll give a little anecdote. Since launching Women Who Code in January, our group has ballooned to be over 900 women. And part of the reason why I do what I do is like I said, to give other women the mic. And, I was at a technical event the other day, and this QA engineer approached me, and she said, I woke up on Easter morning, and I knew what my technical presentation was going to be at the next event that we host. She's been an engineer for 10 years, and she's never talked once about anything technical. And hearing that just made me melt. It was the coolest thing ever, because part of the reason why I wanted to do, why I wanted to start Women Who Code somewhat selfishly was, I really wanted to build a community of, fembot tech lords that could then come together and really, wreak havoc on, on just ideas and push innovation forward. So that to me was just the coolest thing ever, and that's really shaped me. And in turn, it's the best positive feedback loop ever. So that's basically
that's awesome. It. I think in some sense that's all why we're here today, is to really be able to give back in some way and really be that kind of inspiration that hopefully helps someone in their path. So we've had some great inspirational stories, and there's been a ton of support in your environment, and you understand all your superpower, and you're highly self-aware and enlightened. There's a but coming, right? But You know, it's not always like that in the environment in the world that we're in, right? Particularly as you grow in leadership, it becomes more of an isolating or kind of there's a lonely feeling, and when you are maybe the only woman in the room, that can be amplified in some sense. And so it really calls on us to be fearless, right? To really embrace and be able to manage and manage our own inner anxieties or kind of confidence in that. And so, you know, in the face of these challenges, maybe Danielle, if you could kind of share a story of how do you, before you go into those situations, or even when you were in them and you don't even know they were about to happen, how do you think about really tapping into your inner strength and being able to lead with the conviction that you need to?
Well, I'm about to go to another super big challenge that I cannot reveal until next week, and it's been tough. Running a company, running a team that is growing, high-profile customers, high-profile investors, and high-profile events and contests where I'm going to be next week. So a couple of things that usually I do, and these very practical techniques. Number one, sometimes what I need is just to shut down all the noise from the world and lock myself in a place, not look at my email, not pick up phones, and find my inner strength through. I do meditation. That's something I learned actually in the US. I used to find other ways to go back to my central, because you are so distracted, right? At some point, you have, everybody demands a bit of you. Everybody expects strength and decision making. I end up making probably 100 decisions every day. It's exhausting. And plus, on top of that, there's the whole pressure, of course. Plus managing, I'm a mother of a 7-year-old, that too, of course, right? And that's very, very hard to manage all of that, and a lot of traveling. So it's really locking myself up, which may be through meditation, going on a hike, but being alone. I think being alone is something that in the beginning of when I was younger was very scary, and I think it's very scary for a lot of people being alone. I find I went through some process in my early 20s of, okay, here I am alone. This is scary. I'm in a different country alone. But I find my strength being alone, actually, not being with anybody else. So that's kind of my strategy.
Wonderful, wonderful. You know, Holly, you talked a little bit about being a disruptor, right? And yet I can imagine that every new kind of project that you've embarked on has taken this, you know, or needed this ability, even though you're excited about it and you are a disruptor at your core, to really kind of center yourself and tap into, you know, what your strength is and what motivates you. How have you gone from these projects and been kind of the person who is initiating them and really stepping out there in some sense on your own by yourself? How have you really kind of centered yourself and got the courage and the conviction to lead through these projects?
Well, I think having extracurricular activities is really important.
Yeah.
I actually have a couple bonsai trees at home, which is an interesting refocusing of two things: intention and your goal. And, you know, whether it's through trimming bonsais or I also do yoga, understanding your intention behind projects and understanding your goal of a project are two things that are imperative to the action of completing the project. And, you know, because if you don't, then words are just words and action is just action. So, you know, although a lot of the things I have done have been challenging the status quo, including this new project, you know, which is basically building a hive model for women founders and women builders to be able to start their own companies, which is, you know, in turn a very, if you will, disruptive thing. Understanding the goal and understanding, you know, my intention behind wanting just to create, you know, a bigger pipeline for female technical founders is really helps me kind of silence the other chatter that is perhaps a deterrent for continuing with the action. So intention and goal is really important and fundamental.
Yeah. Wonderful. And you know, Jackie, if you look at kind of your career and the changes you've made, I could also imagine that deciding to move between companies or even move your life, right? across the globe has some amount of internal, anxiety, stepping in and really forming your brand and your leadership presence as you move. Do you have anything you would kind of add to, for our audience about how to center yourself in those situations and really be fearless?
Yeah, for me personally, it's about knowing what's important to me.
Yeah.
As you go through life, you make decisions based on certain things, and being clear about what's important to you is how you stay grounded. I mean, I'm a woman of color, and there are very few of me in technology, very few. And so the resilience required needs me to be able to center on what's important to me, because to your point about the chatter, the consternation I may have, what I'm making up in my head, all of those things, I've got to be able to center it around what's important to me.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is about assuming positive intent. At the end of the day, when you're sitting there speaking across from someone and you're having a conversation, if you spend your time trying to figure out, are they trying to take advantage? Are they not understanding? Do they not? Just assume positive intent. Now, they may not know how to cope or how to deal with the situation.
Yeah.
And if you assume positive intent, know what's important, and then overall be resilient. I think, those things, for me, have been, those have been the primary. And then there's one final one. On my shoulder is my father that says you can be and do anything.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Your conversation there brought to me that image of the movie Inside Out, right? Where there's all of those different emotions and whatnot going in your head. And like, in some sense, it's about how do you know that they're there and quiet them and bring out the right one when you need to bring it out. So, yeah. Joy, if I think back in the last, several months for you, it's probably one of the kind of, biggest changes that you've had in your life, both personally and professionally. And, moving in, as you said, Scott tapped you and asked you to do this role in an area that you weren't familiar with, right? And, you had the support of the organization, but I can still imagine that was something that you really needed to kind of center yourself on. Having gone through that journey or being in the middle of going through that journey, what have you learned from that really has helped you as you think about what's next?
So when I started the job in October, I think in the beginning for me, running like a, identity space, 1,000 people org, first I come in, I was running engineering org, but now I'm not just doing engineering, I'm running business. So first of all, I'm trying to figure out what's my value add. Just because you have a big org, I'm trying to identify what's my unique value, right? And the other thing is, because I'm an engineer, so to me is I have to know everything, or at least to the depths I would like, in order to run this space, which is impossible. Part of that process is just being comfortable in terms of the role you are in, even though you are not the expert of the space. And also, the reality is the team doesn't really want to be fed what to do. It's to Jackie's point earlier, it's about how you lead as well as how you inspire the team. Personally, I don't know if there's a causation relation. I'm really outdoor and active. So usually, being outdoor, whether it's hiking or running, that's how I release my stress. But I had a knee injury, so that I had a knee surgery about literally 10 weeks ago. So that also, adds a lot more pressure just personally, because typically, I told Aaron, you either have pressure from work or you have pressure personally at home. But when you have pressure both sides, that almost makes it a bit of suffocating. So I think, going through that, the journey, to right now, a few things. One is, through knee surgery, patience is virtual. I have no patience, and but with knee surgery, just nothing you can do when you cannot walk. And the other thing is, it is a resilience. Until you probably when you're in the tunnel or in the place you feel really high pressure or feel really you don't have to see the light out of the tunnel, it will get better, but just be resilient. That's really important. And last but not least, I think just be able to have some quiet moment, so create clarity. Sometimes when everything is kind of, sort of bestowed upon you, it can feel overwhelming. But be able to step out of it to create level of clarity, I think that really helped.
Yeah.
So, but it has to be a journey. It's always easy to say these words, but until you go through and experience it, everybody's journey is different.
Yeah. I think that's super important to highlight out that all four of you have a different sort of approach to how you do that, but you found the thing that gives you personal calm and personal satisfaction and is your recharge or your rebank. And so discovering not only professionally about yourself, but also kind of emotionally about yourself, what that is really important. So we just have a few minutes left, right? I think you've given us like a number of different things to think about, but as I said in my beginning, today is an opportunity in these 40 minutes we have together to have a little bit of a pause, to forget about all the things that are going out, in your home life, in your work life, in the world, and to hear and these stories, but then to figure out, well, what do you want to integrate and weave back into the story that all of you are really forming and writing about yourselves and your career. And so, in our last, 5 minutes, if maybe we could just kind of go down the panel, starting with Daniela, what's one thing, right, that you would leave this audience with? I know it's a really big question, but what's one thing you would just say in closing about how this audience could think about both discovering their superpower, but also then leveraging it to, the fullest in their lives?
Well, I think optimism is one of my mantras, frankly. I am one of those people that always look at life or any challenge as a glass half full, not in a. I think that's super important for life. Of course, it's not something you can say and now you incorporate and now I'm going to do it. It comes from inside. You are born with that, I believe. But trying to keep the positive thinking, I think that's the most important thing through a career that is challenging, and I guess in any circumstance, but a career that, especially women in tech, where I don't remember, frankly, through my career I think in the beginning I had another woman in the room. Now I have no woman in the room. It's been like that for a couple of years, and that changes the dynamics of things a lot. I'm not judging if it's for the best or for the worst. I'm just saying that it changes, and so to your point, you got to keep focused and positive. That's I think my
Wonderful
takeaway.
Joy.
To me, superpowers, you kind of learn over time who you are. I learn over time who I am and what's my strengths. And sometimes, frankly, just because, you think the others know what to do, but you have different ideas, you kind of assume that they know that's the best way of doing it. Frankly, that is your superpower, which is how, come up with something different. And the reality is might be that's a better idea. And so what I would suggest to the audience is have an idea, don't, let the small voice talk you out of it. Keep pursuing that. Challenge the status quo. And, your idea might be the better out of that. And personally, to me, it is the resilience, just to keep that, never give up. Life is a roller coaster. It'll be high and it'll be down and it'll be back up. So having that resilience that you are in it for the long run, not for the short.
Holly.
Be extremely loud, never apologize, and practice Shoshin. And Shoshin is a Zen Buddhism term, which means beginner's mind. Okay? So whether it is, approaching a problem set, a very tough technical question, framing, an ML problem, thinking about the reasons why people behave in certain ways, starting a new venture, go into it with beginner's mind, because that will take you into different avenues of yourself, different experiences, different connections that you may not have been open to before. And finally, when in doubt, go with God. And you know what that means.
Jackie.
Well, coupled with all the things that were said here, pursue your passion.
Yeah.
If you pursue your passion, your superpower naturally comes out, and all of these things will come to bear.
Yeah. Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I would like to personally thank the four of you for spending the time with you today. To me, the thing that I'm taking away from this is that we all have busy schedules, busy lives, and yet spending the time to come here, all four of you felt like this was a valuable use of your time. Everyone that's in the audience and watching this online, you felt that it's a valuable use of your time. Taking that time to just step back, reflect, to learn from others is really helpful, and it re-energizes me to see, that here we have four women from very, different backgrounds who've had diverse paths through their lives that have all been able to find, right? What is their story? Where did it originate from? Where are the things that really have made them, shape them, who they are? Who are the people in their lives that have helped them do that? How do they navigate it? And how do they use all of the resources that they have to really stay centered and really achieve the goals that they have for themselves, with the intention they have, with the passion that they bring to the world? So with that, I will close and I will say, enjoy the rest of Build. I hope you learned as much as I did today. Thank you very much.